You know, for centuries, biblical prophecy has felt like this incredibly complex, maybe even unsolvable puzzle. But what if the key to unlocking it all wasn't actually lost? What if it was just misplaced? Hidden by a huge shift in the way we've been taught to think?
And that really is the central question for us today. The source material we're diving into makes a pretty bold claim that a simple mistaken interpretation made almost 2,000 years ago has basically hidden a precise, structured timeline for all of human history right in plain sight.
Okay, so it all comes down to a fundamental difference in how you approach the text. The original Hebrew mindset saw history itself as prophecy. Real events like the Exodus weren't just stories, they were literal, physical patterns that God intended to repeat. But over time, that way of thinking got blended with a Greek mindset, which really preferred allegory. For a lot of later thinkers, the spiritual meaning of a story became the most important thing, sometimes completely detached from any literal historical pattern.
And this shift, it didn't happen overnight. The early church, they largely held that historical Hebrew view. But then you have these hugely influential thinkers come along, like Origen of Alexandria, who really pushed the allegorical method. And then bam, St. Augustine writes his masterpiece, City of God, and that pretty much cemented this new approach, rejecting the idea of a literal 1,000-year reign of Christ on earth. And just like that, for over 1,000 years, that original key, the idea that history itself is the pattern, was effectively lost to the mainstream.
So that brings us to the really cool part of this idea, that the Bible actually contains its own keys to interpretation. And you don't find them in some abstract philosophy, no. They're locked right into the code of its own historical events and its divine laws.
And maybe the most important key of all is this thing called the Year of Jubilee, or Yobel in Hebrew. Think of it as a divine reset button for society. God's law said that every 50 years, everything gets reset. All debts are canceled, slaves are freed, land goes back to its original owners. It's total freedom, total restoration. And this isn't just some ancient law. It's a blueprint for God's ultimate goal for all of creation.
And you can see this principle embedded right in the history. Take the fall of Jericho. This wasn't just a military victory, it was laid out as a perfect 7-part prophetic drama. And get this, the trumpets the priests were blowing, the Hebrew word for them was Yobel, the exact same word for Jubilee. It was God literally signaling that the fall of this city was a pattern for a much, much bigger spiritual release to come.
And this is where the pattern just clicks into place. You look at the structure of Jericho's fall, and you realize it's a direct blueprint for the book of Revelation. The 7 days of marching perfectly mirror Revelation's structure of sevens within sevens. You have 7 seals, and the 7th seal opens to reveal 7 trumpets, and the 7th trumpet unleashes 7 bowls of judgment. It's only after that complete 7-part pattern is finished that the ultimate enemy system, what Revelation calls Babylon, finally comes crashing down. An ancient battle becomes the key to understanding the end of the world.
All right, so with that foundation in place, the sources we're looking at propose something huge. A grand, unified timeline for all of human history. A divine blueprint that spans millennia.
So the big picture here is a 7,000-year plan for humanity. It's beautifully simple, really. Just like the creation week had 7 days, all of human history is structured in 7 1,000-year periods. The first 6,000 years are like the work week of human struggle, sin, and God's plan of redemption, and it's all leading to a final 1,000-year Sabbath that prophesied millennium of rest and total planetary restoration.
Now, this is where it gets really specific and maybe a little controversial. The source material argues that if you do a super detailed analysis of biblical chronology, meticulously counting the generations from Adam through the kings of Israel and connecting it to our calendar, you find that this 6,000-year work week is set to end right around the year 2043.
But the evidence for this timeline isn't just about adding up a bunch of years. It really hinges on what the source calls a stunning and precise symmetry, a repeating pattern that seems to lock the whole blueprint together. And that pattern is defined by a very specific length of time, 1845 years.
So what you're seeing here is the core of that hidden symmetry. The argument is that major prophetic fulfillment dates in the modern era are precisely mirrored by parallel foundational events that happened exactly 1845 years before. It's almost like a mathematical echo has been woven into time itself, making history rhyme in this very specific, very fixed way. Okay, let's actually look at a few examples, because this is pretty wild. The start of Christ's first advent in 29 AD is said to have its parallel in 1874 AD, a date some have interpreted as the start of his invisible second advent, or parousia. Or look at this one. Napoleon's conquest of Egypt in 1799, seen as the end of a specific 1260-year prophecy, is mirrored exactly 1845 years earlier by Julius Caesar taking that very same territory. The end of Israel's special status in 69 AD is mirrored by the end of the times of the Gentiles in 1914. The claim is that this precise 1845-year gap shows up over and over, tying all these distinct prophecies into one single unified timeline.
But, in any great story, no divine plan goes unopposed. And the sources we're looking at argue that this divine blueprint has a shadow, a dark mirror image, a counterfeit system that's designed to invert and parody everything God is doing.
The underlying principle is pretty simple, really. Wherever you find a divine original, a counterfeit will eventually pop up to try and mimic it. You see this theme all the way through the prophetic writings.
And in prophecy, that ultimate counterfeit has a name: the beast. This isn't just one bad guy, it's a whole global system that acts as a satanic parody of God's kingdom and his methods.
Let's just compare them side by side. The divine pattern, it flows from heaven down to earth. It follows God's timing, like the Sabbath and the Jubilee, and its goal is to release people from debt and bondage, to restore life. The beast system is the complete inversion. It works from earth, trying to build its way up to heaven. It manipulates time, it creates and enforces debt, and its pattern is always one of depletion and collapse.
And this parody gets chillingly personal when you compare the beast directly to Christ. The beast is the ultimate antichrist, not just because it opposes him, but because it creates this dark mirror image of him. Christ gets his authority from the Father, the beast gets its power from the dragon. Christ was truly slain and resurrected, the beast fakes this with a deadly wound that was healed, a counterfeit resurrection to fool the world. Christ's kingdom draws people who want to worship him, the beast's short-lived reign demands forced global worship. It is a complete, blasphemous inversion of the real thing.
So with all this cosmic conflict, where is everything heading? Well, the ultimate goal of the divine blueprint is a final, universal resolution, what you could call creation's final jubilee.
The thing is, despite all the opposition from the counterfeit system, the trajectory of the divine plan is unstoppable. Its ultimate purpose, as the Apostle Paul put it, is the summing up of all things in Christ. This is the final Jubilee playing out on a cosmic scale, a grand reconciliation that brings harmony and restoration to everything, not just on earth, but in the heavens too.
And the book of Revelation paints this absolutely stunning picture of the finale. It's not a story of eternal conflict, it's a story of ultimate, universal praise. The Apostle John hears every created thing, in heaven, on earth, under the earth, in the sea, all of it, joining in one massive chorus of worship.
And this all leads to the ultimate promise. The final act of the plan, the last stage of this cosmic jubilee, is the complete abolition of the final enemy, death itself. This isn't just about saving souls, it's about the total restoration of all creation back to life.
So, if the sources we've looked at are onto something, it means history isn't just a random series of chaotic events. It's a precisely structured story with a clear beginning, a cosmic conflict at its center, and a defined ending. And that leaves us with one final, pretty urgent question. If this timeline is even close to being right, what chapter are we living in right now?